Right now, inside your skull, there is a tube shorter than your pinky finger, and it is the only thing standing between you and a burst eardrum every time you fly. That tube is about to become the most important structure in your body for the next 90 seconds, and you have probably never once thought about it on purpose. Here is the mystery. Your eardrum is a thin sheet of tissue, roughly a centimeter across, stretched tight like a drum skin. Behind it sits a pocket of air, sealed inside your skull in the middle ear. In front of it is the outside world. For that eardrum to vibrate properly and let you hear, the air pressure on both sides has to match. Problem is, the outside world does not stay still. When a plane climbs, the air outside your head gets thinner fast. A jetliner cruises around 35,000 feet, where outside pressure is a quarter of what it is at sea level. Cabins are pressurized, but only partway, to feel like you are sitting at roughly 6,000 to 8,000 feet elevation. That still means a real drop, and your body has to keep up. So picture the eardrum as a tiny scale, weighing air on either side. As the plane climbs, outside pressure drops before inside pressure does. The trapped air behind your eardrum is now pushing outward harder than the air in the cabin is pushing in. The eardrum bulges. That bulge is what makes sound feel muffled, like someone put a pillow over the world. This is where the tube comes in. It is called the eustachian tube, named after the 16th century Italian anatomist Bartolomeo Eustachi, and it runs from your middle ear down to the back of your throat, near your tonsils. Most of the time it stays closed, collapsed shut by soft tissue, only opening for a fraction of a second when you swallow or yawn. That small opening is the pressure valve for your entire skull. When it opens, air rushes through, pressure equalizes, and the eardrum snaps back into its resting position. That snap is the pop. Climbing is usually the easy direction. Air wants to escape from the middle ear, and it mostly leaks out on its own even without much effort, because the pressure difference is pushing the tube open from the inside, like a one-way valve nudged in the right direction. Descending is the hard direction, and this is where most people actually feel pain. As the plane comes down, outside pressure rises quickly. Now the cabin air is pushing inward harder than the trapped air in your middle ear is pushing out. The eardrum gets sucked inward instead of bulging outward. To fix that, air has to flow up the eustachian tube, against gravity in a sense, into the middle ear, refilling that space. That direction is not automatic. The tube has to be actively pried open, usually by the muscles you use to swallow or yawn. This is why flight attendants hand out candy on the way down and why swallowing works. Every time you swallow, a small muscle called the tensor veli palatini tugs the tube open for a heartbeat, just long enough for a puff of air to sneak through. Chewing gum, sipping water, yawning deliberately, all of these just increase how often you trigger that muscle. The Valsalva maneuver, pinching your nose and blowing gently, forces air up the tube directly, which is why it works so well, and also why doing it too hard can be risky, since you can push too much pressure into a delicate space. Babies have it worse, and this explains why they scream on descent more than adults do. Their eustachian tubes are shorter, narrower, and sit almost horizontal, compared to the more sloped, adult version that develops with age and skull growth. That flatter angle makes it harder for gravity and muscle action to help air drain or flow through, so pressure changes hit them harder and faster. This is also part of why children get more ear infections. Fluid and bacteria have a harder time draining out of a short, flat, poorly angled tube. Now here is the part that turns this from an inconvenience into something with real medical stakes. If your eustachian tube is blocked by a cold, allergies, or congestion, it cannot open properly, no matter how much you swallow. Mucus swells the lining shut. When that happens, the pressure difference across the eardrum can grow large enough to cause real pain, and in rare but documented cases, it can rupture the eardrum itself. This condition even has a name, ear barotrauma, and it is one of the most common medical complaints tied to air travel, affecting a significant fraction of adult travelers to some degree on nearly every flight, according to otolaryngology research. Most cases are mild and self-correct. A tiny percentage require medical attention. Widen out for a second, because this is not just an airplane problem. The same tube, the same pressure math, is at play anytime you change altitude quickly. Divers deal with an underwater version of this called ear squeeze, but in the opposite direction, since water pressure builds far faster than air pressure. Just 10 meters of water adds a full atmosphere of pressure, which is why divers are trained to equalize every meter or two, constantly, unlike the 1 or 2 pops most flyers need per flight. Mountain drivers get a milder version too, going up a steep pass. Even elevators in very tall buildings, moving fast enough, can trigger a small pop, because Taipei 101 and the Burj Khalifa cover enough vertical distance to shift real pressure in seconds. So that little pop is not a random quirk. It is a tiny, ancient plumbing system, evolved for chewing and swallowing on solid ground, being repurposed in real time to protect a paper-thin membrane from the physics of a machine that did not exist for 99.9% of human history. Your eustachian tube was never built with airplanes in mind. It just happens to be good enough, most of the time, to keep up. Next time that pop happens, 30,000 feet over some ocean, you can picture it. Somewhere behind your throat, a valve smaller than a straw just decided how well you hear the rest of your flight. It is easy to imagine our bodies as fixed, finished machines. Moments like this suggest something else, that we are all still running on adaptations built for a much slower, much lower world, quietly stretched to their limits every time we leave the ground.